The HOA president screamed at an emergency meeting. She demanded a teenage girl be executed. Death penalty, electric chair, the girl's crime, Halloween decorations. The president had no idea who the girl's father was. Her life was about to end in minutes. What happens when power meets justice? Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. My name is Robert Harrison. I work as a federal judge in a big courthouse downtown. But in my neighborhood, nobody knew this about me. I was just Bob, the quiet guy who lived on Maple Street with his daughter Emma. I kept my job private because I wanted my family to be safe and normal. That all changed one day in October. My daughter Emma was 16 years old. She was creative, artistic, and loved Halloween more than anything. That year, she decided to make the most amazing Halloween decorations for our front yard. She worked on them for weeks. Emma built fake tombstones from wood and painted them gray. She created skeleton hands that stuck out of the ground. She wrapped purple lights around our big oak tree. The whole thing looked like a small spooky graveyard, but in a fun, harmless way. Not scary in a bad way, just in a Halloween way. I came outside to see her work. She was standing back, looking at everything with pride. "Dad, look how cool this looks," Emma called out. "Do you think I have a chance to win the neighborhood decorating contest?" I smiled at her. "It looks amazing, sweetheart. This is really creative. You worked so hard on this." Emma beamed. She had always been a good kid. Smart in school, kind to people, and she loved creative projects. This was exactly the kind of thing she loved to do. That's when Margaret Walsh appeared. Margaret was the HOA president. HOA stands for Homeowners Association. Margaret was 52 years old, and honestly, she was the person nobody liked in our neighborhood. She walked around like she owned every house. She complained about everything. If your grass was 1 inch too tall, she complained. If your car was the wrong color, she complained. She made everyone's life difficult with her power trips and mean attitude. She walked over to our yard like she had found a crime scene. "What is this?" Margaret screamed, pointing at Emma's decorations like they were something terrible. "Halloween decorations, Mrs. Walsh," Emma said politely. She was always respectful, even when people were rude. "I've been working on them all week. I'm excited about them." Margaret's face turned red. "This is disgusting. This is inappropriate. These decorations disturb the peace. They are lowering our property values. This is a family neighborhood, not a cemetery." I walked down from the porch. "Margaret, they're just Halloween decorations. Emma spent a lot of time making them. She's very creative." "I don't care how much time she spent," Margaret said coldly. "This looks like a real cemetery. It's morbid and wrong." "Emma, don't talk back to me. I'm reporting this to the HOA board immediately." Emma looked hurt and confused. She had done nothing wrong. She was just having fun and being creative. 3 days later, Margaret called an emergency HOA meeting. She sent messages to every house in the neighborhood, saying there was a serious community safety problem that needed immediate attention. The meeting was at the community center. When I got there, the room was full of confused neighbors. They had no idea why they were even there. Margaret stood at the front of the room like a prosecutor in a courtroom. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began dramatically, "we are facing the most serious threat our community has ever seen. One family has turned their property into a scene of death and violence." People looked around at each other, confused. Margaret clicked a remote and pictures of Emma's Halloween decorations appeared on the big screen behind her. "These images show what the Harrison family has done," Margaret said, pointing at the screen. "Fake tombstones, skeleton hands, symbols of death and violence. This is not just inappropriate, it is dangerous. This is a mental health crisis. This girl is clearly disturbed and dangerous. Mrs. Johnson, an elderly neighbor who lived near us, raised her hand. Margaret, those are just Halloween decorations. My grandchildren love them. They think they're fun and creative. Fun. Margaret's voice became very high and loud. These are not fun. These are symbols of murder and death. This young girl is clearly mentally sick. Only a sick, twisted mind would create violent imagery like this. The room went very quiet. I stood up. Margaret, my daughter created these decorations as harmless Halloween fun. There is nothing dangerous or inappropriate about them. Halloween is supposed to be spooky. That's the whole point. Your daughter is obviously mentally disturbed, Margaret said with a cold laugh. Only a sick mind would create such violent images. I could feel my anger rising, but I stayed calm. I had dealt with people like Margaret in my courtroom many times before. You've crossed a line, Margaret, I said, keeping my voice quiet and controlled. I haven't even started crossing lines, she replied with a cruel smile on her face. Margaret clicked to the next slide. This one showed a close-up picture of one of Emma's fake tombstones. Look at this evidence, Margaret announced loudly. This tombstone has the name R.I.P. Mr. Walsh carved into it. This is a death threat against my family. The room gasped. I looked at the picture and understood what had happened. Emma had put random, funny names on her fake tombstones as a joke. She had not meant anything bad. She just thought it would be funny to have silly names like Mr. Walsh on fake tombstones in a pretend graveyard. Margaret's husband Frank stood up from the back. Margaret, that's not even my real name on there. It just says, Mr. Walsh. It's clearly just a Halloween decoration. Why are you making such a big deal about this? Sit down, Frank, Margaret snapped at her own husband. Then she turned back to the crowd of people. This is a death threat against my family, Margaret declared. This disturbed teenager is threatening to murder us. She put our name on a tombstone. She is planning to kill us. That's ridiculous, I said, standing up. Emma put random names on fake tombstones. It is not a threat. It is not a plan. It is just a Halloween decoration. Margaret's eyes began to shine with something that looked like excitement or pleasure. This was what she wanted. She wanted drama and chaos. This is premeditated murder, Margaret shouted. Your daughter is planning to kill people in this neighborhood. She is planning to murder my husband. She is a dangerous criminal. Emma, who had been sitting quietly beside me, started to cry. I didn't mean anything bad. I just thought it would be funny to have funny names for a pretend graveyard. I would never hurt anyone. I'm just a girl who likes Halloween. You think murder is funny? Margaret pointed at my crying daughter like she was pointing out a criminal. You think death is amusing? That's enough, Margaret, I said, my voice becoming harder. Stop attacking my daughter right now. Your daughter is a dangerous criminal, Margaret declared. She is making death threats against neighbors. She is planning violence. When this psychotic child murders someone while they sleep, don't come crying to me. I warned everyone. A neighbor named Mr. Rodriguez stood up. Margaret, you are being ridiculous. It is just a Halloween decoration made by a teenage girl. You are being crazy. Margaret turned on him. When this psychotic child murders someone in their sleep, don't come crying to me. I tried to warn all of you. She clicked to her final slide. This showed a photo of Emma smiling next to her decorations. Look at her face, Margaret said, pointing at my smiling daughter. Look at that evil smile. This is the face of a cold-blooded killer. This is a psychopath who enjoys thinking about murdering people. Emma was sobbing now. I put my arm around her to protect her and comfort her. This community is in immediate danger, Margaret continued, speaking louder and louder. Emma Harrison is clearly a psychopath. She fantasizes about murder and death. Her decorations prove she is planning to kill people. She is a terrorist. Margaret's voice became very loud and crazy sounding. Emma Harrison should be arrested immediately. She should be charged with making terrorist threats. She should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. She should be sentenced to death. She should fry in the electric chair. The room went completely silent. Even Margaret's supporters, the people who usually agreed with her, looked shocked and upset. They could not believe she was saying this about a 16-year-old girl. Death sentence? Mrs. Peterson gasped. Margaret, she is just a child. She is 16 years old. She is a dangerous criminal, Margaret insisted. When someone makes death threats and plans violence, there is only one appropriate punishment. The electric chair. She should die for terrorizing this community. I could not believe what I was hearing. This woman was seriously demanding that my 16-year-old daughter be executed for making Halloween decorations. You want my daughter sentenced to death? I asked quietly, my voice controlled but dangerous. Yes, Margaret declared triumphantly. Emma Harrison should be executed for terrorizing this community. She should fry in the electric chair for her crimes. Margaret called for a formal HOA vote. She wanted everyone to vote on whether to report Emma to the police and demand criminal charges. All in favor of reporting Emma Harrison for making terrorist death threats, raise your hands, Margaret announced. To my complete horror, about half the room raised their hands. These were people who had known Emma since she was a little child. They had watched her grow up. They knew her. But they were voting to have her arrested anyway. I was shocked and angry beyond words. Motion passed, Margaret declared with satisfaction. I will be contacting the police tomorrow to report Emma Harrison as a dangerous threat to this community. Emma was crying so hard she could barely breathe. Dad, I didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted to make pretty Halloween decorations. I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't say anything mean. I know, sweetheart, I said, holding her close. Don't worry. This isn't over. Margaret heard me say this. You're right, Mr. Harrison. This isn't over. Your daughter is going to pay for threatening this community. She is going to learn that actions have consequences. Yes, Margaret, I said, looking directly at her. Actions do have consequences, and you are about to learn that lesson yourself. Margaret laughed coldly. Are you threatening me now? Like father, like daughter. Your whole family is violent and dangerous. I'm not threatening you, Margaret, I said quietly. I'm making you a promise. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. What are you going to do? Margaret asked mockingly. Complain to the HOA? I am the HOA. I smiled at her. Margaret, you have no idea who you are dealing with. The next morning, Margaret called the police. When Officer Martinez arrived, she was waiting for him at our house. Officer, I need to report a terrorist threat made by a dangerous teenager in our neighborhood, Margaret told him. What kind of terrorist threat? Officer Martinez asked, pulling out his notepad to write things down. Emma Harrison has created death threats against multiple residents, Margaret said. She made fake tombstones with our names on them. She is clearly planning violence. She is a danger to this community. Officer Martinez looked confused. Ma'am, are you talking about Halloween decorations? These are not decorations, Margaret insisted. They are death threats. This girl is mentally disturbed and planning to murder people. Officer Martinez walked over to look at Emma's decorations in our front yard. The fake tombstones were still there, along with the skeleton hands and purple lights. Ma'am, these appear to be standard Halloween decorations, Officer Martinez said. I don't see any threats here. This looks like something a creative teenager would make. Look closer, Margaret demanded. There is a tombstone with Mr. Walsh on it. That is a death threat against my husband. Officer Martinez examined the fake tombstone carefully. This appears to be a decoration for a pretend graveyard. It is not a credible threat. It is not a real threat. Not credible. Margaret's voice became very high and loud again. Officer, this girl needs to be arrested and charged with making terrorist threats. She should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. She should go to prison. Ma'am, creating Halloween decorations is not a crime, Officer Martinez said, shaking his head. It is not illegal. If you feel threatened, you can file a civil complaint, but this is not a criminal matter. This is not something I can arrest someone for. Margaret's face turned bright red with rage. Fine. If local police won't do their job, I will go to the FBI. I will go to the district attorney. I will make sure this dangerous criminal gets the death penalty she deserves. What Margaret did not know was very important. I served as a federal district judge in the same courthouse where she planned to file her complaints. I worked in the federal court system. That means I had power over federal cases. The next Monday morning, I was sitting in my office at the courthouse. My office is called Chambers. My assistant, Jennifer, knocked on my door. Judge Harrison, there is a woman here who says she needs to file an emergency petition, Jennifer said. She claims there is a terrorist in her neighborhood who needs to be arrested immediately. Send her in, I said, although I had a feeling I already knew who it was. Margaret Walsh walked into my office wearing her most expensive clothes and carrying a thick folder full of documents. She looked around my office with its law books, certificates, and American flag, but she did not recognize me in my black judge's robes. Your Honor, she began formally. I am Margaret Walsh, president of the Pine Valley Estates HOA. I am here to report a dangerous criminal who is terrorizing our community. Please have a seat and tell me about this situation, I said, keeping my voice neutral and professional. Margaret sat down and opened her folder. She spread papers and photos across my desk. There is a teenage girl in our neighborhood named Emma Harrison who has made terrorist threats against multiple residents, Margaret said. She has created death symbols and is clearly planning violence. She showed me photos of Emma's Halloween decorations. As you can see, Your Honor, she has created a scene of death and violence in her front yard. This is clearly the work of a disturbed mind planning criminal acts. She needs to be arrested immediately. I examined the photos carefully. These appear to be Halloween decorations. That is what everyone keeps saying, Margaret said in frustration. But they are not decorations. They are threats. This girl put my husband's name on a tombstone. She is planning to murder him. She is planning to kill people. Have you contacted local police about this? I asked. Yes, but they refused to do their job, Margaret said angrily. They said Halloween decorations are not crimes. But this is not decoration. This is terrorism. This is a death threat. Margaret leaned forward intensely. Your Honor, I am requesting that you issue an immediate warrant for Emma Harrison's arrest. She should be charged with making terrorist threats, disturbing the peace, and planning violence. She should be punished severely. What punishment do you think would be appropriate? I asked, wanting to see how far she would go. Margaret's eyes lit up with cruel satisfaction. This was what she had wanted to say all along. Your Honor, when someone terrorizes an entire community and makes death threats, there is only one appropriate punishment, Margaret declared. The death penalty. Emma Harrison should be executed for her crimes. She should be sentenced to die in the electric chair. She should fry. I sat back in my chair, completely stunned by how much hatred this woman had toward my daughter. How could anyone demand that a 16-year-old girl be executed for making Halloween decorations? You want a 16-year-old girl executed for putting up Halloween decorations? I asked. She is not putting up decorations, Margaret insisted. She is making death threats. And yes, I want her executed. People who terrorize communities and threaten violence deserve to die. This girl is a psychopath who enjoys thinking about killing people. Margaret pulled out more photos and showed them to me. Look at her face in these pictures, Margaret said, pointing. She is smiling next to symbols of death. This is clearly a psychopath who enjoys the idea of killing people. Mrs. Walsh, do you have children? I asked her. Yes, I have 2 adult sons, she said. But they were raised properly and never made death threats against neighbors. How would you feel if someone demanded that your sons be executed for something they did as teenagers? I asked. Margaret's face hardened. If my sons had terrorized a community and made death threats, they would deserve whatever punishment they got. The law is the law. The law is indeed the law, I agreed. And you are about to learn exactly what that means. I stood up slowly. Mrs. Walsh, before I make any decisions about your petition, I need to ask you something very important. Do you know who Emma Harrison's father is? Margaret looked confused. Some government worker named Bob Harrison. Why does that matter? It matters very much, I said. You see, Mrs. Walsh, Emma Harrison is my daughter. Margaret's face went completely white. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. What? She whispered. I am Judge Robert Harrison, I said. Emma is my 16-year-old daughter, and you just spent the last 20 minutes demanding that I sentence my own child to death. Margaret started shaking. That is impossible. You are a federal judge. Bob Harrison works for the government. I am a federal judge and I do work for the government, I said. You have been living across the street from a federal judge for 3 years and never knew it. Margaret turned completely pale. But, your daughter made death threats. My daughter made Halloween decorations, I said firmly. You, on the other hand, just committed several serious federal crimes in my courtroom. What crimes? Margaret whispered. Filing false reports with federal authorities, making false accusations under oath, wasting federal resources. And most seriously, attempting to use the federal court system to harass and intimidate a minor child. These are serious federal crimes. Margaret started shaking even more. I did not know. I was just trying to protect the community. No, Mrs. Walsh, I said coldly. You were trying to destroy a 16-year-old girl's life because you did not like her Halloween decorations. You demanded that she be executed. I pressed the intercom button on my desk. Jennifer, please ask Federal Marshal Thompson to come to my chambers immediately. Yes, Your Honor, Jennifer's voice came back. Margaret started panicking. Wait. I made a mistake. I did not understand the situation. Please, I made an error. Oh, you understood perfectly, I said. You understood that you have power as HOA president and you decided to use that power to destroy a teenage girl's life. Federal Marshal Thompson entered my office. He was a large man in a federal marshal uniform. You requested my presence, Your Honor, he asked. Yes, I said. I need you to arrest Mrs. Margaret Walsh for filing false federal reports, perjury, and abuse of federal judicial resources. No, Margaret jumped up. This is a misunderstanding. I was just trying to protect my community. Please, you have to believe me. Ma'am, please remain seated, Marshal Thompson ordered. Mrs. Walsh, you committed these crimes in my courtroom in front of me with full documentation, I continued. You filed false reports claiming my daughter was a terrorist. You demanded her execution under penalty of perjury. These are federal crimes. Margaret started crying. Please, I have a family. I made a mistake. Yes, you did make a mistake, I said. You made the mistake of attacking my daughter and demanding her death. Now you will face the consequences of that mistake. Marshal Thompson placed handcuffs on Margaret's wrists. Margaret Walsh, you are under arrest for filing false federal reports and perjury, he said. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As they read her rights, Margaret looked at me with terror and desperation in her eyes. Please, I am sorry. I will drop all complaints against your daughter. I will take everything back, she begged. Too late, Mrs. Walsh, I said. You committed federal crimes. The case is out of your hands now. You will go to trial. You will face punishment. Within hours of Margaret's arrest, the FBI opened a full investigation into her activities as HOA president. An FBI agent named Sarah Martinez came to my house that evening to interview Emma about Margaret's harassment campaign. Emma, I need you to tell me everything Mrs. Walsh said and did regarding your Halloween decorations, Agent Martinez said gently. Emma, still shaken by the whole experience, told the agent about Margaret's accusations at the HOA meeting and the demand for her execution. She really said you should get the electric chair? Agent Martinez asked, taking notes. Yes, Emma whispered. She said I was a psychopath and a terrorist and that I should be executed for making Halloween decorations. She said I should die in the electric chair. I did not do anything wrong. I just wanted to make pretty decorations. Emma, you did absolutely nothing wrong, Agent Martinez said kindly. Mrs. Walsh committed serious crimes by making false accusations and trying to misuse the federal court system. The FBI investigation quickly expanded. The agents discovered that Margaret had a pattern of abuse and harassment as HOA president. They found that she had filed false police reports against 7 different families over the past 2 years. She had falsely accused neighbors of drug dealing, child abuse, and property destruction. In each case, Margaret had used her position as HOA president to intimidate people and try to force them to comply with her unreasonable demands. But demanding the execution of a 16-year-old girl was the most extreme and criminal thing she had ever done. Word of Margaret's arrest spread quickly through legal circles and then to the media. The headline in the local newspaper read, HOA president arrested for demanding teen's execution over Halloween decorations. The story went viral on social media. Within 24 hours, the story was being covered by major news networks. CNN reported, HOA president faces federal charges for death penalty demand. Fox News reported, Halloween decorations lead to federal arrest. NBC reported, judge's daughter targeted by neighbor's execution demand. The internet was very critical of Margaret. The hashtag #ElectricChairKaren trended on Twitter for 3 days. People made thousands of videos mocking her on TikTok. Reddit threads had hundreds of thousands of comments calling her evil and cruel. Margaret's mugshot became a meme representing the worst of HOA abuse and neighborhood bullies. The Pine Valley Estates community was shocked to learn that their HOA president was a federal criminal. An emergency HOA meeting was called to remove Margaret from her position and elect new leadership. Mrs. Johnson, the elderly neighbor who had supported Emma from the beginning, was elected as the new HOA president. Margaret Walsh abused her power and terrorized this community for years, Mrs. Johnson said in her acceptance speech. We are going to create an HOA that actually serves the residents instead of attacking them. The new HOA board immediately passed a resolution apologizing to Emma and our family for Margaret's actions. They voted to pay for Emma's therapy and counseling to help her recover from the trauma of being targeted for execution. Federal prosecutor David Chin was assigned to Margaret's case. He called me to discuss the charges. Judge Harrison, we are looking at multiple federal felonies, he said. Mrs. Walsh filed false reports with federal authorities, committed perjury in federal court, and attempted to abuse the judicial system for personal revenge. What kind of sentence is she looking at? I asked. Each count carries up to 10 years in federal prison, Mr. Chin said. We are looking at 30 years total if she is convicted on all charges. That is a very long time in prison. She demanded my daughter be executed for making Halloween decorations, I said. She deserves every year of that sentence. I agree completely, Mr. Chin said. We are also investigating her pattern of filing false police reports as HOA president. She may face additional charges for those crimes. Margaret tried to hire expensive lawyers, but they all refused to take her case once they saw the evidence. The video of her demanding Emma's execution in federal court was impossible to defend. She was forced to accept a public defender, who immediately advised her to plead guilty and hope for mercy. 3 months after her arrest, Margaret appeared in federal court for her plea hearing. Since she had committed crimes against my family, I had to recuse myself from sentencing her. That means I could not be her judge because I was not fair and balanced about her case. Another judge, Judge Patricia Williams, would handle that part of the case. But I was present as the victim's father when Margaret entered her guilty plea. She looked terrible. Her perfectly styled hair was now gray and messy. Her expensive clothes had been replaced with an orange jail uniform. Federal prison had not been kind to her. She looked aged and defeated. "Mrs. Walsh," Judge Williams said, "how do you plead to the charge of filing false federal reports?" "Guilty, Your Honor," Margaret whispered. "How do you plead to the charge of perjury in federal court?" "Guilty, Your Honor." "How do you plead to the charge of abuse of federal judicial resources?" "Guilty, Your Honor." Judge Williams looked at Margaret with disgust. "Mrs. Walsh, you have pleaded guilty to demanding the execution of a 16-year-old girl for putting up Halloween decorations," Judge Williams said. "Do you understand the severity of your crimes?" "Yes, Your Honor." "I am sorry. I made a terrible mistake," Margaret said. "This was not a mistake, Mrs. Walsh," Judge Williams said. "This was a deliberate campaign of harassment and abuse against a child. You used your position of power to terrorize a teenage girl and her family. You demanded her death. That is not a mistake. That is evil." Margaret started crying. "I was just trying to protect the community. I thought she was dangerous." "You thought Halloween decorations were dangerous?" Judge Williams asked. "You thought a 16-year-old girl deserved to die for putting up fake tombstones and skeleton hands? How could you possibly think that was reasonable?" Margaret had no answer. 2 weeks later, Margaret appeared before Judge Williams for sentencing. Emma and I were both present to give victim impact statements. This means we could tell the judge how Margaret's actions had hurt us. Emma spoke first. Her words were powerful and heartbreaking. "Mrs. Walsh tried to have me killed for making Halloween decorations," Emma said. "She called me a psychopath and a terrorist. She said I should die in the electric chair. I was just trying to have fun and make my house look spooky for trick-or-treaters. I never hurt anyone or threatened anyone, but she wanted me dead anyway. I still have nightmares about it. I have had to go to therapy to deal with the trauma. I am afraid to be myself now. I am afraid to be creative because I am worried someone else will attack me like she did." Then it was my turn. "Your Honor, Margaret Walsh did not just attack my daughter," I said. "She attacked the very concept of justice. She tried to use the federal court system as a weapon to destroy a child's life. She demanded execution for Halloween decorations. This level of hatred and abuse cannot be tolerated in a civilized society. My daughter did nothing wrong. She was just being a normal teenager. Margaret Walsh tried to destroy her life out of pure cruelty and abuse of power." Margaret's lawyer made a weak request for leniency. "Your Honor, Mrs. Walsh is sorry for her actions. She was confused and scared. She thought she was protecting her community. I ask for mercy and a chance for her to make amends." Judge Williams was not impressed or sympathetic. "Mrs. Walsh, you held a position of power in your community and you abused that power in the most vicious way possible," Judge Williams said. "You targeted a child with lies and hatred. You demanded her death for no reason other than your own cruelty and abuse. You used false accusations and threats. I sentence you to 12 years in federal prison followed by 5 years of supervised probation. You will also pay $500,000 in restitution to the Harrison family." Margaret collapsed in her chair, sobbing hysterically. Please, I have a family. I cannot go to prison for 12 years. This is too much. You should have thought about your family before you tried to destroy someone else's, Judge Williams replied coldly. Margaret was sent to a federal women's prison in Texas, far from her family and friends. Prison was especially hard for someone like Margaret, who was used to having power and control over others. The other prisoners quickly learned that she had tried to have a teenager executed for Halloween decorations. This made her a target for harassment. She spent most of her 12-year sentence in protective custody, which means she was kept away from other prisoners for her own safety. She was mostly alone. Meanwhile, Emma thrived and grew stronger. She graduated high school as the top of her class. She was accepted to Harvard Law School with a full scholarship to pay for her education. I want to become a lawyer so I can protect other kids from people like Mrs. Walsh, Emma told me. Emma specialized in civil rights law and became one of the country's leading advocates for protecting children from abuse and harassment. She established the Emma Harrison Foundation, which provides legal help to kids who are bullied or targeted by adults in positions of power. The foundation has helped over 1,000 children since it was created. Emma married a wonderful man named Dr. James Martinez, and they had 3 beautiful children together. She never let Margaret's hatred and cruelty define her life. Instead, she used the experience to help other children facing similar situations. After serving 10 years of her 12-year sentence, Margaret was released on supervised probation. She was now 62 years old with no family, no home, no money, and no future. Her criminal record made it impossible to find decent employment. She was forced to live in a halfway house and work minimum wage jobs to survive. The internet never forgot what she had done. Videos of her demanding Emma's execution were still shared and viewed millions of times. Every potential employer and landlord could easily find this information with a simple Google search. Margaret had become a symbol of everything wrong with HOA abuse and neighborhood harassment. 5 years after Margaret's release from prison, I ran into her at a grocery store. She looked terrible, aged, broken, and defeated. She was wearing cheap clothes and looked like she had not slept well in years. When she saw me, she froze, clearly terrified. "Judge Harrison," she whispered. "Margaret," I said. "How is Emma doing?" "She is Dr. Emma Harrison Martinez now. She is a successful civil rights lawyer with 3 beautiful children and a wonderful life," I said. Margaret started crying. "I am glad she is okay. I think about what I did every day. It haunts me constantly. I cannot escape it." "Good," I said. "It should haunt you. You tried to have an innocent child executed." "I know," Margaret said. "I was wrong. I was cruel and evil. I destroyed my own life because of my hatred and cruelty." "Yes, you did," I said. "And you deserved every consequence you faced. I know you will never forgive me, but I need you to know I am sorry," she said. "I was wrong about Emma. She was just a good kid making Halloween decorations. I tried to destroy her life, and I hate myself for it every single day. I looked at this broken woman who had once wielded so much power and caused so much pain." "Margaret, you are right about one thing," I said. "I will never forgive you. What you did was unforgivable." She nodded and walked away without another word. Today, Emma is one of the most respected civil rights lawyers in the country. She has argued cases before the Supreme Court and won landmark victories protecting children from abuse and harassment. The Margaret Walsh case is taught in law schools as an example of how the justice system can protect victims and hold abusers accountable. Emma's Halloween decorations are now displayed in the Smithsonian Museum as part of an exhibit on freedom of expression and the First Amendment. The Pine Valley Estates HOA, under new leadership, became a model for how neighborhood associations should operate, helping residents instead of harassing them. Margaret's story became a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of standing up to bullies. People sometimes ask me if Margaret's punishment was too harsh for demanding a child's execution. My answer is always the same. She deliberately and maliciously tried to destroy a teenager's life. She demanded execution for creativity and fun. Margaret abused her power as HOA president to terrorize families for years. She filed false police reports against innocent neighbors. She used fear and intimidation to control an entire community. But when she targeted my daughter and demanded her death, she crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Every consequence she faced was a direct result of her own choices and actions. At Emma's law school graduation, she gave a speech that I will never forget. When I was 16, a woman tried to have me executed for putting up Halloween decorations, Emma said. She used her power to attack me because she thought I was powerless to fight back. She was wrong. That experience taught me that we must always stand up to bullies and abusers. We must protect those who cannot protect themselves. We must never let hatred and cruelty win over justice and compassion. Today, I dedicate my career to making sure no other child faces what I faced. Every kid deserves to be safe from adults who abuse their power. The audience gave her a standing ovation. Margaret Walsh died alone in her small apartment at age 67. Her death was caused by heart failure brought on by years of stress, depression, and isolation. She had no friends, no family, and no one who cared about her. Her body was not discovered for a week. Only the building manager and a social worker attended her funeral. The obituary was just 2 lines. Margaret Walsh, age 67, died of heart failure. She was preceded in death by her reputation and legacy. Even in death, Margaret was remembered only for the evil things she had tried to do to a child. Meanwhile, Emma continued her successful career helping children and families. She had 3 beautiful children who love Halloween and decorate their house every year without fear. Emma named her youngest daughter Hope because she believes there is always hope for justice and healing. Margaret tried to destroy Emma's life, but instead she made Emma stronger and more determined to help others. In the end, good triumphed over evil. Love conquered hate. Justice was served. That is exactly how it should be.